His friend and mine, this amazing woman in the front row, has been trying to get him to tell a story for a long time. And his life motto is take everything seriously and take nothing seriously. Please welcome with a big round of applause for our final storyteller, Oscar.
So Flora did miss out one person, of course, that is Flora herself. Can we give Flora a big round of applause? It is true, Lisa here did try to get me to do this for a year now. I was at the first of these events, and it was smaller. Had I known it was this much bigger, I may not have said I would do it. Here I am. Okay, what do you know? At the beginning of tonight, Clara did say, there is a method in why I've chosen the order tonight, and I think I know why I'm chosen last. Can I have a shout if you've had one drink tonight? Can I have a shout if you have 2 drinks tonight? Can I have a shout if you have 3 or more drinks tonight? You are my people. The one drawback is I've had 5 drinks tonight. Oh dear. This story is brought to you by letters A and U. So in case you haven't already realized, I am a Brit. I was brought up in London, England, but my family was not English. My father was Czech. Any Czechs here? No, good. Any Slovaks here? My mother was Slovak. Okay, good. That's safe. So anyway, my parents both came individually from Czechoslovakia when the Soviets invaded in '68, and they both made home in London. And then 10 years later, that's when I came along. And it was a mixed household, let's put it that way, a little bit confused. When I saw the theme was lost in translation, I knew this is my life. My father spoke to me in Czech, my mother spoke to me in Slovak, my brother spoke to me in English, of course. My grandmother's first language was German, and we had Latvians and Hungarians and even Transylvanians in the extended family, so just throw it all in. Any Slav will do. But more so than even the language aspect was the cultural aspect. So I was brought up Jewish, I should say ostensibly Jewish, because I did go to synagogue every Saturday, and I did go to my cousins every Friday and break the Sabbath. But then why did my dad really enjoy eating bacon sandwiches? It didn't make sense. And why do we have a Christmas tree every year? And why are we the only Jew in the neighborhood to have a sausage slicer on our kitchen worktop? And a fridge full of Polish cabanos? Yeah, it was a bit confusing. And all of these examples aside, the most weird example was Easter. Because it wasn't just that we celebrated Easter, we celebrated Czech Easter in England. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Eastern European Easter, but it's a weird one. What it meant was me and my brother were forced to go to all the Czechs in our neighborhood with a willow stick. And yes, we would beat the mothers until they gave us chocolate Easter eggs. Yes! It's called culture. Oh man, I'm sorry, anyone Czech listening? I hope the hashtag Ja Také movement is doing better in Czech recently. But to put it in a short way, I couldn't explain that to my Christian friends after we got back from Easter, let alone my Jewish friends. It was a strange childhood. But the whole point about this story is, it made no difference at all. Like in London, it did not matter. Even though it was weird, it was not weird. It's just the things that you do. It only actually came to a head when I eventually moved to Japan, which was when I was 21 years old the first time around. I had done my degree and I did not know what I wanted to do, so I escaped to the Japanese countryside to teach English for 2 years. It's a place called Okayama in the west of Honshu Island. A very rural place. Oh, you've been? Oh, there you go. It's not the most homogeneous place. So that was when I was first asked, we do these things in Japan. What do you do in your country? We have these customs in Japan. What do you do in your country? And that was when, for the first time, actually in my life, I had to think, what the hell am I? Am I actually a Brit? Am I a Jew? Am I Eastern European? Like, how can I possibly explain this situation to this homogeneous society in rural Japan? There wasn't really a way. Here's what happened. On my first lesson in my visit school, so I should explain, I had a main school, I was a teacher in the countryside, and I had a visit school. And I had done a couple of lessons, my first lessons in Japan, at my main school. And then I went to my visit school, and I thought, yeah, look, I'm not really feeling this. How can I explain who I am to these children? So I figured it out. I said, listen, my accent can define me. That's something which is concrete. We all know that I have an English accent. So I went to their classroom and I walked in with my teacher. So basically how it worked was there was an English teacher and there was a Japanese teacher and you would teach together. Kazana sensei, the name was. And I said to her, I'm going to actually just try something different in this class, and she nodded very politely. So we walked into the classroom. I did my usual introduction that I've now done a few times, so I was quite confident. I'm from England, here's a photo of my family, here's a photo of my favourite food, family, house, the whole thing. And then I said, and I am English. And I happen to know that the previous teacher who was working in this school was from Canada. So I was able to say, that was a Canadian accent and I have an English accent. And then I just pulled one word out of the air to say, this is a word that we say differently in the English accent. I chose the wrong word. This is the kind of story that you think, this is contrived. He made this up just to have a funny story. I swear this is how this went down. I said, your previous teacher would have said, can't. But I say, can't. And my Japanese teacher, who was very happily translating all the way through, she now suddenly started to talk a lot more. You know how you see in those films, where you say something in one language and the translation is way longer? Have rehearsed this, I was thinking in my head. But there she goes, she was talking, and I didn't speak a lick of Japanese at that point. This was my first week in Japan. And then before I knew it, all of the children, let's say there were about 30, 12-year-olds, suddenly stood up. And then they started saying that word out loud together. They said, I don't know, I can't say it, there's been a few words been spoken today, but I am not going to say that word. But they said that word, 30, 12-year-olds, and I basically melted. I don't know what happened externally, but internally, I was shriveling into a very small shape on the floor. And even when I looked over at my sensei, Kazana sensei, help me, help, what's going on? All I could see back was, I can't talk. Don't feel sorry for me. I deserved it. Years later, I realized, wait a minute. I had a similar situation when I was growing up, but it was in reverse. So, in that respect, I made a mistake with the letters A and U. But maybe there's a little trend in my life. Because at some point along the line, I realized that, wait a minute, my Czech family have a funny accent, and I am going to take the mickey out of them. Maybe I was 13, maybe 12, maybe 10, but basically I was a very cheeky kid. And my poor father was the main brunt of all of my teasing. Let me give you a couple of examples. The first one was, in the Czech language, there's no definite or indefinite article. So there's no the and there's no a. Actually, it's like Chinese and Japanese. And my father, sometimes he would forget to include a the where it should belong. And then sometimes he would add an extra the when one wasn't necessary, which I called a feat of grammatical overcompensation. And one of the favorite stories that we still say today in our family was when I was off to my first day at work. It was actually just a part-time job, but I remember clearly when I was walking out the door, my father called down from the top of the stairs and said, "Oscar, go! Remember, ask for money up the front!" Great advice. But more than just that, the Czech language is a very smooth language. So if you think about the English language, we have very hard consonants. So we have the p, k, t, t, testicle. I did not rehearse that in there. Where did that come from? Okay. But in the Czech language, actually, it's such a light sound, like it barely touches the surface of the T and then comes right back up. It's like almost a D, but it's like somewhere in the middle, like a D. And it's the same with vowels. Lo and behold, we're back to the A and the U. In English, the vowels are quite hard. We've got A, we've got U, it's pretty straightforward. In Czech, it's not so straightforward. The A is somewhere in between. It's not quite an A, it's not quite an U. And often when I was at home, I would be listening to my father, because he worked from home. And he'd be saying to his clients on the phone, "You know what? Let's just send a fax, you know? Just you fax me, or I fax you, let's just fax each other." On the same theme, if you want to be quite emphatic in Czech, you can end your sentence with the word that's spelled F-A-K-T, as in that's A. So you can imagine the surprise of a small child when his father is telling him a story, and at the end he finishes with, "And that's the way it is, fact." I'm so sorry, Father. I'm not. So, what's the point of the story apart from saying lots of rude jokes? I told you, you're my people. The point is, yes, there is a strange way that A and U have been in my life. And in fact, actually just now when I was in the toilet getting ready for this, I realized I've got an A in my first name, I've got a U in my surname, and I have an A and a U in my middle name. No one cares but me, but that's pretty cool. But the real point about this story is, you know, the point about identity, which is really what this lost in translation evening has all been about, and we've heard some amazing stories this evening. For me personally, I was not as confident as some of the speakers about my own identity. I just did not know how to identify myself. And later in life I realized it's not always even up to you, because other people can identify you on your behalf. I didn't ask to be identified as a Brit, or a Jew, or an Eastern European. What I concluded with this story in mind was that there's one thing that I don't mind being identified as, and that is my father's son. Thank you very much.